My name's Kristina, and this whole mess started way back when I was just 10 years old. That's when my parents got divorced, so I ended up staying with Mom. Dad moved into this tiny apartment across town, and suddenly everything was different. The house felt too quiet, and Mom was always stressed about money. She had to work extra shifts at the hospital where she was a nurse, and I spent a lot of time at my grandpa's house after school. Grandpa was Mom's dad, and he was honestly the best. He lived in this old house that smelled like coffee and had these creaky wooden floors. He'd always make me hot chocolate and help me with homework. Sometimes he'd tell me stories about when Mom was little, and it made me feel better about everything falling apart at home. Now, here's the thing about my dad. He wasn't paying child support. Instead of giving us money every month like he was supposed to, Dad made this deal with Mom. He said he'd pay for my college education when the time came. Mom agreed because she thought it would be better for me in the long run. The years went by, and I kept doing well in school. When I got to college, Dad paid for my first semester. Everything seemed fine. But then something weird happened right before my second semester. Dad started calling me less, and when I'd call him, he'd sound stressed. A few weeks later, I got a call that changed everything. I was in my dorm room when my phone rang. "Chris, we need to talk," Dad said. And I could hear the stress in his voice immediately. The company I invested most of my money in, it went bankrupt. I lost everything. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. "What do you mean, everything?" "I mean, I can't pay for your next semester." "I'm sorry, kiddo. I know I promised. But this wasn't supposed to happen." When I hung up the phone, I cried for probably an hour. Then I called Mom, and she did what she always did. She figured it out. Mom took out loans and worked even more hours to pay for my education. She never once made me feel bad about it, even though I knew it was killing her financially. Dad kept in touch, but things were different now. The help never came, but honestly, I wasn't even that angry about it. I was disappointed, sure, but I still loved my dad. He wasn't a bad person, he was just unreliable. At least that's what I told myself. Then, when I was 20, everything changed again. Grandpa died. A few days after the funeral, Mom and I sat down to go through Grandpa's will. He'd left Mom all his savings, plus all the antique furniture and dishes from the house. But the house itself? He left that to me. I didn't know what to do with the whole house. I was still in college, living in a dorm. The idea of owning property at 20 felt crazy. "Maybe I should just sell it," I said. "I could use the money for school, and you could pay off some of those loans." But Mom shook her head. "Don't rush into anything, Chris. Maybe after you graduate, you'll want to live there. It's a good house in a nice neighborhood. Just think about it for a while." So I agreed to think about it. The house just sat there empty while I finished my junior year. A few months later, I went to visit Dad. We met at his usual spot, some chain restaurant where the food was okay and nobody asked too many questions. He looked different somehow. Happier, maybe. "So, how's school going?" he asked after we ordered. "It's fine, actually. I have some news. Grandpa died a few months ago." "Oh, I'm sorry, kiddo. I know you were close to him." "Yeah, well, he left me his house. I was thinking about selling it, but Mom thinks I should keep it." "Well, actually," Dad said, leaning forward, "this is perfect timing. I've been meaning to tell you something. I've been dating someone for about a year now. Her name's Linda, and things are getting serious. We're actually talking about getting married." I was surprised but happy for him. That's wonderful. The thing is, we have a problem. My apartment is tiny, and Linda has a 16-year-old son. The place just isn't big enough for all of us, and Linda's current living situation isn't working out either. I could see where this was going, but I let him continue. "I was wondering, since you won't be living in that house for another 2 years while you finish school, maybe we could stay there temporarily, just until we get back on our feet and can buy our own place. We'd take care of the house, make sure everything's maintained. It would be good for everyone." I thought about it for a minute. It did make sense. The house was just sitting empty, and Dad seemed like he was finally getting his life together. "I guess that could work," I said. "But when I graduate and come back home, you'll move out right away, right?" "Absolutely." Dad said quickly. The second you're ready to move in, we'll be out. I promise. That word, promise, made me hesitate for a second. But he seemed sincere. When I told Mom about the conversation, her reaction was immediate. Kristina, you need to be very careful with your father. He's not a reliable person. Mom, come on. That was years ago. People can change. He's getting married again, starting fresh. I'm just saying, be careful. You know how he is with promises. So I decided to let Dad and his new family live in the house. A few weeks later, Dad called to tell me he'd gotten married to Linda. They moved into Grandpa's house, my house, and when I came home for winter break, Dad introduced me to my new stepmother. Linda seemed nice enough. She was probably in her early 40s, had blonde hair, and smiled a lot when she talked to me. Dad had set up a big room upstairs for me to use when I visited. It had been Grandpa's study, and it still smelled like his old books. It felt weird being a guest in what was technically my own house, but I figured it was temporary. Everything seemed to be working out fine. Dad looked happier than I'd seen him in years, and Linda was always polite to me. Her son was quiet and mostly stayed in his room when I visited. I thought maybe Mom had been wrong about Dad. Maybe he really had changed. But then I started noticing little things. Small changes around the house that bothered me. The first time I really noticed something was wrong was during spring break of my senior year. I came home expecting to stay in my usual room, but when I got there, I found Linda's son, Jake, had basically taken it over. His stuff was everywhere: clothes on the floor, video game controllers on the desk, empty soda cans on the nightstand. I found Dad in the kitchen making coffee. Hey Dad, what's going on with my room? Jake's stuff is all over it. Dad looked uncomfortable. Oh, yeah. Jake's friends come over a lot to hang out, and his room is pretty small. They needed more space. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, so I just moved my stuff to the guest room downstairs. But it bugged me. This was my house, even if I wasn't living in it yet. Over the next few visits, I noticed more changes. Linda had rearranged the living room furniture. Some of Grandpa's old pictures were gone from the walls, replaced with family photos that included Jake, but not me. The kitchen had different dishes, Linda's dishes, not Grandpa's old ones that I remembered. The worst part was that Linda started acting different toward me. At first, she'd been so grateful and friendly, but now she seemed annoyed whenever I showed up. She wouldn't say anything directly, but I could feel it. Like when I'd come into the kitchen in the morning, she'd give me this look like I was interrupting something. Or she'd make breakfast for Dad and Jake, but somehow forget to make enough for me. When I'd ask if there was more, she'd say something like, "Oh, I didn't know you were planning to eat with us. I only made enough for the family." The family, like I wasn't part of it, even though it was my house. Dad never seemed to notice these little digs. He was always at work or busy with something else. And when I tried to talk to him about it, he'd just say Linda was stressed about work, or that I was being too sensitive. By the time I graduated college, I was actually relieved that I wouldn't have to keep visiting. I got offered a good job in the next city over, about an hour away from home. The pay was decent, and honestly, I was excited to start my adult life somewhere fresh. When I called Dad to tell him about the job, he seemed happy for me. "That's great, Chris. I'm proud of you." "Dad, you should probably start looking for a new place soon. I mean, I don't know how long I'll stay at this job, and I might want to move back home at some point." Of course. I've actually already started looking around. Don't worry about it." That made me feel better. Dad was keeping his word, just like he'd promised. A year went by, and I was doing well at my new job. I'd found a small apartment that I liked, and I was making friends with my coworkers. Life was good. I'd call Dad every few weeks to check in, and he always said the same thing, that he was still looking for a place but hadn't found the right one yet. Another year passed. I was getting a little impatient, but I tried to be understanding. I knew it was hard to find affordable housing, especially for a family of 3, and it wasn't like I needed the house right away. But then I started asking more direct questions. "Dad, how's the house hunting going? It's been 3 years now." "Yeah, I know. It's taking longer than expected. I'm still saving money for the down payment on a mortgage. How much have you saved so far? There was a pause. Listen, Chris, I don't want to get into the specifics right now. The important thing is I'm working on it. He immediately changed the subject after that, talking about the weather and asking about my job. But I could tell he was uncomfortable. Something wasn't right. 3 more years passed, 6 years total since they'd moved into my house temporarily. I was 26 years old and had never even lived in my own house. Every time I asked Dad about his progress, he had a new excuse. The market was too expensive. He hadn't saved enough money yet. They were waiting for Jake to graduate high school so they wouldn't have to change school districts. Jake needed to finish his senior year. Now, Jake was starting college, and they didn't want to move during his first semester. I was starting to feel like an idiot for believing him for so long. During this time, I wasn't visiting the house much anymore. When I did come home, I usually stayed with Mom. It just felt too uncomfortable staying at my own house where Linda clearly didn't want me around. She'd gotten even worse over the years, barely speaking to me when I showed up. The few times I did stay there, she'd act like I was some unwelcome guest who was imposing on their hospitality. Mom never said, "I told you so," but I could see it in her eyes whenever I complained about the situation. Then something happened that changed everything. I got a phone call from a company back in my hometown. They'd heard about my work through some industry connections and wanted to offer me a position. The salary was almost double what I was making, and it was exactly the kind of job I'd been hoping to get someday. "We'd need you to start in about 6 weeks," the hiring manager said. "Would that work for you?" I looked around my little apartment. I'd been living here for 4 years, and while it was fine, it had never really felt like home. The idea of moving back to my hometown, being near Mom again, and finally getting to live in my own house was incredibly appealing. "Yes," I said, "that works perfectly." So I drove home without calling ahead. I wanted to see Dad's face when I told him the good news. I was actually feeling pretty generous about the whole thing. Maybe I'd even help them with moving expenses or give them an extra month to find the perfect place. I pulled into the driveway of my house and sat there for a minute, looking at the place where I was finally going to live. The yard looked different. Linda had planted some flowers that Grandpa never would have chosen, and there was a new mailbox. But it was still a beautiful house. I slid the key into the lock and tried to turn it. Nothing. I tried again, thinking maybe I was just rusty at using this particular lock. But the key wouldn't turn at all. It felt like it wasn't even the right key anymore. I knocked on the door, feeling weird about knocking on my own house. After a minute, I heard footsteps. And then the door opened. Linda stood there with the most annoyed expression I'd ever seen on her face. "Kristina, what are you doing here? You almost broke our new lock." "I was trying to use my key, but it doesn't work anymore." "Of course it doesn't work. We changed all the locks in our house last month for security reasons. You should have warned us about your visit in advance." I opened my mouth to say that this was actually my house, but before I could get the words out, I heard Dad's panicked voice from behind her. "Chris!" "Hi, kiddo, we weren't expecting you. Can I come in?" "I have something important to tell you." Dad quickly stepped forward and almost pushed Linda aside. Of course, let's go to the kitchen and talk." Linda looked confused by Dad's behavior, but she stepped back and let us pass. I could feel her watching us as Dad practically dragged me toward the kitchen. "So what brings you here?" Dad asked, his voice shaky as he closed the kitchen door behind us. "I got offered a job here in town, a really good job with great pay. I'm moving back home in a month." Dad's face went completely white. "A month? That's very sudden." "Not really, Dad. You've had 6 years to find a place. It's time for you to move out, just like we agreed." Dad sat down heavily in a chair. "Chris, listen, we need more time. A month isn't enough. The housing market is crazy right now, and we're still working on our finances. Maybe you could stay in a hotel for a while? Linda doesn't know about our arrangement, and she might not understand." "Then tell her." "It's complicated. Look, if you stay in a hotel, I'm sure it would work out better for everyone." "Fine. If you pay for the hotel, I'll stay there." Dad's face fell. "I don't have any extra money right now." Then I'm staying here. I walked out of the kitchen before he could argue anymore. Linda was in the living room, and she looked up when I came in. Are you leaving? She asked hopefully. Actually, no. I'm staying for a while. Linda's expression darkened, but she didn't say anything. Dad came out of the kitchen, looking miserable, but he just nodded when Linda looked at him questioningly. The rest of the day was incredibly uncomfortable. Linda made lunch for herself and Dad, but didn't make any for me. When I asked if there was enough to share, she said, I only made enough for the family. The family, not including me, apparently. After lunch, Linda announced, Jake and his fiancée will be coming home soon. His fiancée? I asked. What's she doing here? Linda's eyes flashed. No one asked your opinion about who we invite into our house. We'll have whoever we want here. She said it with such venom, like I was some unwelcome intruder. I looked at Dad, hoping he'd say something, but he just turned away and stared out the window. That evening, Jake came home with a young woman who looked about 19. Linda immediately started fussing over them, talking about wedding plans and asking about the girl's family. A few days passed, and Linda made it clear she wanted me gone. She'd turn the TV up loud when I was trying to read. She'd cook meals and not make enough for me. She'd have loud phone conversations about how some people didn't know when they weren't wanted. Then, one morning, Jake's girlfriend was still there, and Linda knocked on my door. You need to move out of this room. Jake and his fiancée need it. I'm not moving out of my room. Yes, you are. This is your father's house. And as the woman of this house, I decide who stays where. I'm not leaving my room. Linda actually tried to grab my arm and pull me out of the doorway. You'll do what I tell you to do in my house. That's when Dad finally appeared. Linda, stop! Let's not do this! He pulled Linda away, and she was furious. Why are you protecting her? She's disrupting our whole household. I just shook my head. So Jake and his girlfriend ended up squeezed into the small guest room, and they were obviously not happy about it. The girl kept complaining about how cramped it was, and Jake kept giving me dirty looks like this was all my fault. Linda stopped speaking to me entirely after that. She'd walk past me like I didn't exist, or she'd give me these looks that could kill. The tension in the house was so thick, you could cut it with a knife. 3 days later, I woke up, and the house was completely silent. Usually I could hear Linda moving around in the kitchen by 7 in the morning, but there was nothing. I went downstairs and found a note on the kitchen table. Kristina, we have gone to meet Jake's fiancé's parents for a week. While we are gone, you should pack your things and leave our house. Do not be here when we return. We don't care where you go. You can live in the trash with the homeless for all we care. Linda. I read the note 3 times before it sank in. I took a picture of it with my phone and immediately sent it to Dad. No response. I called him, straight to voicemail. I called again an hour later, still voicemail. I tried 5 more times throughout the day, nothing. Finally, I called Linda directly. What do you want? She answered on the first ring. I want you to explain this note you left. What's to explain? We're all tired of you living here like some kind of parasite. Your father is too nice to tell you himself, but I'm not. Excuse me? You heard me. You're a leech. You don't even have a job, and you've been living in our house for free for a month. We're done with it. Linda, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, you think, because you're his daughter. You can just move in here and take over. Well, this is my house now, and you're not welcome. She hung up on me. I sat in the empty house, my house, and realized that everything Mom had warned me about was coming true. Dad wasn't just unreliable. He was a coward. And now I was going to have to fix this mess myself. I called Mom and told her everything. Every single detail about the note, the phone call, and how Dad was ignoring me completely. 2 hours later, Mom showed up with a determined look on her face that I hadn't seen since the divorce. Where are all their things? She asked. Everywhere. Their clothes, furniture, everything. Good, let's pack it all up. We spent the next 4 hours going through the house and collecting every single item that belonged to Dad, Linda, and Jake. Clothes, personal items, electronics, even Linda's stupid decorative pillows. We packed everything into boxes and bags and carried it all out to the old barn behind the house. After we finished, Mom called a locksmith. We need all the locks changed immediately. The guy came out that same afternoon and put in completely new locks throughout the house. Mom paid him in cash and made sure I got all the keys. There, she said, handing me the key ring. Now it's really your house again. Mom left that evening, and I spent the night alone in my house for the first time ever. It felt strange, but good. I walked around touching Grandpa's old furniture and looking at the places where his pictures used to hang. I was going to put everything back the way it was supposed to be. A week later, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I looked out the window and saw Dad, Linda, Jake, and his girlfriend all getting out with suitcases. Linda marched up to the front door and tried to use her key. Nothing happened. She tried again, jiggling the key and pushing on the door. Then she started knocking. "Kristina, open this door right now!" Dad tried his key next, same result. Then Linda started pounding on the door with her fists. "This is ridiculous! She's lost her mind! I'm calling the police!" "Linda, calm down," Dad said, but his voice was shaky. "Calm down! Some psycho has changed the locks on our house. She's as crazy as her mother." That's when I decided I'd heard enough. I opened the door. Linda pushed past me and grabbed her suitcase from the porch. "I can't believe you had the nerve to change our locks." I grabbed the suitcase right back and threw it outside onto the lawn. "Hey!" Linda screamed. "That's my stuff! And this is my house!" "Your house? Are you insane? This is your father's house." "No, it's not." Linda turned to Dad, who was standing on the porch, looking like he wanted to disappear into the ground. "Tell her, honey. Tell her this is our house." Dad just stared at his shoes. "Tell her," Linda demanded. "Linda," Dad said quietly, "the house, it actually belongs to Kristina. She inherited it from her grandfather. We've been living here temporarily." Linda's face went through about 5 different expressions before settling on pure rage. She slapped Dad across the face so hard the sound echoed across the yard. "You lied to me. For 6 years, you lied to me." "Linda, I can explain." "Explain what?" "That you've been lying about everything? That we've been living in your daughter's house this whole time?" Linda ran to her suitcase and started calling someone on her phone. "Yes, I need a truck. I need to move furniture immediately." Dad tried to approach me. "Please, just let me explain." "Explain what? How you lied to your wife for 6 years? How you tried to steal my house? How you ignored my calls when she told me to live in the trash?" They spent the next few hours loading their stuff into the truck. Linda kept shooting murderous looks at both me and Dad. Jake and his girlfriend just looked confused and annoyed. When they finally drove away, I breathed a sigh of relief. 6 months later, I ran into Dad at the grocery store. He looked older and tired. "Hey, kiddo," he said. "How are you doing?" "I'm fine. How's the apartment?" "It's okay, small, but we're managing." He paused. "Listen, I was wondering, maybe you'd consider giving us a loan. Just $150,000 for a down payment on a house. Linda's been talking about leaving me because she can't stand living in such a small place." I actually laughed out loud. I couldn't help it. "You want me to loan you $150,000? I know it sounds like a lot, but with your new job." "Dad, you're completely insane." "I'm desperate, Chris. Linda told everyone we know that she married me because I had a house, and now she feels humiliated. She's threatening to leave me. Then let her leave. I can't lose her too." "Too? You didn't lose me, Dad. You threw me away." Dad looked hurt. "Look, if you won't help me, then I'm going to call your mother and ask her for the money." I started laughing again. "Seriously? You're going to call Mom for money?" "I'm desperate enough to try anything. Good luck with that." I walked away, still laughing. The whole way to my car, I kept thinking about what Mom would say if Dad actually called her asking for money. The idea was so ridiculous that I couldn't stop laughing. When I got home to my house, I called Mom and told her about running into Dad. "He asked you for $150,000, she said, "after everything he put you through?" "Yep, and he said he might call you next." "Oh, I hope he does," Mom said. "I have been waiting years for that conversation." These days, I live quietly in Grandpa's house. I put all his pictures back on the walls and use his old dishes every day. The garden is beautiful again, and everything feels the way it's supposed to feel. I still talk to Mom all the time, and now I actually listen to her advice. She was right about Dad from the beginning. Some people never change.